Welcome Ajit. Ajit is Vice President and Managing Director of Facebook India. And as you know, Facebook is all over the world. Let me start with the first question on video, because that is what is my background too. Till a few years ago, pivot to video was considered conventional wisdom. Then it became a rib that you wanted to, tease someone. Then it became fast, because everyone was pivoting to video. But if you go by consumption patterns, it's still the highest consumed. So, and Facebook, if you see, the algos and whatever is recommended, video is up there. From your experience, what has been the experience with video? And since it is consumed so much, why is the whole pivot to video thing considered such a joke now for other industries?
Yeah, I think, thank you for having me. It's good to be here. Two things. I think if you look at what happened in the last 3 years or so in India, and in many ways, the explosion of video on the mobile is really an Indian phenomenon. It hasn't really happened at this scale in many other markets. And it was really driven by a couple of things. One, as a whole bunch of new users came online, video was a very easily accessible medium for a lot of people to embrace and engage with. There wasn't a lot of friction in the experience of watching video. And second, I think with some of the amazing work that happened first with Reliance and the other telecom operators, the one big constraint to video consumption online and in the India context on the mobile was the cost of data. And as the cost of data dramatically came down, I think 4 or 5 years ago, it used to be something like $10 to stream an hour of video. And today it's something almost close to zero. The biggest barrier to consuming video went away. And therefore, I think what we are now seeing happen is really all of the pent-up demand that was there, the huge appetite for video that was there, that was only showing up on broadcast television 4 or 5 years ago, is now all showing up on the mobile screen. So I'm not sure, Abhinandan, whether I think your point is it's become so ubiquitous in such a short period of time, it's almost become a cliche. But when you step back and think about it, it is fairly dramatic, and I can't think of a transformation of this scale where it went from almost nothing to everyone is watching video on the mobile in such a short period of time. And that's all happened in India in just the last 3 years. So I think it is quite remarkable. And I think it also sets the context for what next. Clearly, there is appetite for video. Clearly, there is tremendous sense of comfort with watching video on mobile. I think it really asks the question, what does it mean for where can we take this? Is there a direction where the entertainment part of it, at least in a broadcast sort of way, has been established? I can think of lots of different ways in which the experience can evolve. But I don't think we have even scratched the surface of what does it mean to use video to expand access to learning or access to services of all kinds, including government services. So I think that foundational context has been set, but it does feel like we have barely scratched the surface in terms of what is really the potential of video in a market like India, where everyone is on mobile, it's fairly cheap, and it's easily accessible.
I'll come to how we can benefit from that as news organizations a little later. But since Facebook, I'm guessing, is, if not the largest, one of the largest single platforms where people view video, so you have the viewing habits of people from across the world. Is there a difference in how people or how much they tend to consume or how they interact with entertainment, news, sport, and general, rants, video blog rants? I mean, do you see that this is where it all goes and the others is not really consumed so much in video.
By video blog brands, you mean free expression, right?
Yeah.
I think all of it is coming alive. I think if I look at entertainment, news, and sports, all three have exploded. And for me, one of the big things that really changed, and I think India drove a lot of the change, was there was an assumption, if you circle back to 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, that people would not watch live sports on a mobile screen. And I think, Abhinandan, I suspect, and I don't want to allude to your age, Abhinandan, but I know you did share with me before we came on stage that you were one of those who was skeptical that live sports would not be watched on a large television screen.
I was just telling Ajit that me and my nephew used to sit and have dinner while watching La Liga. And last year, suddenly there was no La Liga. He says, "Where's La Liga?" I said, "It's gone on Facebook and we can't watch it on anymore." So I was just wondering, do people watch sport with that small ball and a small Messi hopping around? And Hotstar has IPL. So yeah, that's the context. Now it's moving. Like the IPL rights or the La Liga rights are not just Star Sports, CSP, and Facebook is also in that game. So
yeah, and I think you were alluding to Hotstar. I think what I discovered when I was there is in India and increasingly around the world, people, including, it wasn't just younger audiences, people in general did not sort of think of it as this is a small screen. I think the mobile has become so a part of your daily habit. It is always with you. We didn't see any friction in terms of whether it was entertainment or news or live sports, which always, for the sports fan, I think there was a stereotype that they will only want to watch it on a large screen. We didn't see that friction. I think the minute it was made available on the mobile, and the experience of it was good, where it wasn't buffering, you could easily access it, it was affordable, the numbers exploded. I think what's interesting for me, especially sitting here at Facebook, is that first use case has been proven that if you make content available, whether that's entertainment or news or sports on a mobile, the demand is there. And people will consume it, they will engage with it. I think for me, the next stage of it, especially for us, is there a way to evolve the experience where it's not just replicating the experience of television on a different screen, but especially for a service like Facebook, where at the heart of it is friends and family and communities and interest groups coming together. How do you bring the power of that community to the experience of watching and following video? And therefore, a lot of the products that Facebook has already launched, but even more interestingly, a lot of the experiments that are going on now, and India is at the heart of it, a lot of the product effort is, how do we really think through the future of what we call social video? But it's nothing more than how can we reinvent, knowing that the power of experiencing any kind of content is amplified dramatically when you're watching it with people who share your interest. In your case, it could be your nephew who is as passionate about following Barcelona as you may be. Or it could even be in the news context, that it is that you're passionate about a topic, but you may well have very differing points of view and you want to have that debate. I think that's the next frontier for us, that it's not just about making video available on a mobile. It is, can we really reinvent the experience of watching that video and allow communities and interest groups and friends and family to come together and share in that experience and essentially create a social video experience that is new and dramatic and even more transformational than I think the world has seen so far.
Okay, speaking of, putting a platform where people can experience something together and it's this joint town square kind of experience, you also have 3 platforms. There's Facebook, there's Instagram, and there's WhatsApp. Are all 3 strategically and as far as they engage with the audience running parallelly, or is there some sort of a strategy that transfers this experience to that? Because I'm the Facebook generation. I guess, my nephews, nieces will be the Instagram generation. I think WhatsApp, the way people use, is a little different from how they use the other two. So is there any way that these two connect, just like you figure that people will connect when they watch it on the platform?
It's an interesting one, and I think, Abhinandan, in your question, there were 2 or 3 different questions there. One in terms of, how do we look at it as a portfolio? What are consumer experiences, and then how does video show up differently on all 3? I think if I step back, the one big observation is people around the world, and including in India, are engaging with all 3. I think there is sometimes a stereotype sort of that Facebook is for older people like you, and Instagram is for younger people like me. I don't think that's true. I think what we are seeing is that people are showing up on Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp. Young people are showing up on the Facebook app in big numbers, and it's growing, and they're engaging. But we do see some differences. Facebook is oriented towards engaging with friends and family at its core. In Instagram, we see that there's a lot more orientation towards followership of interests and celebrities, and if you're passionate about travel or fashion or food, it's skewed a lot more in that direction than friends and family. And I think WhatsApp is fundamentally different from both the Facebook app and Instagram because it is a private space. I think both Facebook and Instagram are more, both have Messenger and Direct, but both the services provide you a public forum. There's a lot of fluidity of public content. But WhatsApp, of course, is really a private space for users. And as you know, I think in India, WhatsApp is pervasive. Everyone uses WhatsApp. And even when we think about video, I think that those differences obviously do show up, where there's a lot of engagement on video on Facebook, the app, around communities. On Instagram, it is skewed towards interest groups. And of course, WhatsApp, because it's private and encrypted, we don't really see what kind of content is shared, but video obviously is a sharing of videos is obviously a big use case for WhatsApp as well.
Okay, now you have experimented with, and I guess in different parts of the world, I don't know how different it is, but in India you have had collaborations and associations with news platforms, and how news platforms can use Facebook to optimize the experience. And now you've just got into allowing subscriptions on Facebook. In fact, News Laundry is at a testing stage on that. Business Standard is already doing it. How have those experiences been with news platforms and your associations, partnerships with them? And what are you thinking of doing in the future where news and news platforms can somehow benefit from it, both from a user experience point of view and also from a sustainability point of view? Because so far, at least, you don't allow much commerce within the Facebook ecosystem. What are the reasons for that, and where is that going?
A couple of things on this. I think one, the starting point, and for a lot of people in this audience who we have worked with, partnered with closely, I think you know this, we care about news fairly deeply because the communities on Facebook care about news. And we see that there's a lot of interest, whether it's friends or families, in terms of engaging with news. So it's core to the people on our platforms, and therefore it's core to us. And hopefully you've seen us engaging in a sincere partnership with you as a news provider. If I look at the past, I do think there are times when we have overpromised to news organizations and not delivered as much as we have promised. I know that there are times when it's difficult to work with us because we do a lot of experiments, we change things. So recognizing both, I think for me, when I think about it in terms of what is really the opportunity for Facebook to be an ally for news organizations, I would think of it as really starting with what is important for news organizations like you, Abhinandan, and then see how can we leverage the scale of the platform, the strength of our product to advance those objectives. So if I were to take a crack at it, I would imagine that 2 or 3 objectives that are critical. One, most news organizations have clearly an objective in terms of growing monetization. I think just to make sure that they're building sustainable businesses in what is clearly investment heavy. That is one. I think second would be, are you engaging with your core audiences, the core readers or core viewers, a lot more than just broadcasting to them, right? Are you able to engage with them and create communities and interest groups where there may be folks who are quite interested in engaging with the anchors and reporters and editors? So that's really about how do the news organizations really build up followership and equity for their brands. And I think the third thing would be, I would imagine, where can we partner with you as you're exploring fundamentally new opportunities in the Indian context. So if I look at all three, I think on the first one, we are definitely seeing a material movement in monetization, especially video-led monetization through ad breaks. I think the number that I remember is we pay out to news publishers around the world something like $1.5 million a day. And we have seen fairly material movement in the short term where there's almost, I think, a 3x growth in the number of pages that are earning out, I think, more than $10,000 a month. So clearly, video-led monetization through ad breaks is one way in which we are making sure that we are being a partner for your agenda in terms of helping build a sustainable business. I think you referred to commerce. We have a live partnership with Business Standard. Your organization and mine are now involved in a testing. That's another place where clearly I think everyone recognizes that a healthy news business has a subscription as a strong element of it. And therefore, we have figured out mechanisms on the product using instant articles to push subscription. I think part of your question was, can we take it even a step further
Next, yeah.
and even have closure of those payment transactions on one of our apps? And that's an interesting question, and we are experimenting with that with Instagram and clearly more relevant for fashion and related retail commerce in the US.
Actually make a purchase on Instagram.
Where you can make a purchase on Instagram and close the transaction through native pay and checkout. So I think as we learn more from that experiment of Instagram in the US, where we see there are opportunities to replicate that model to be an ally for subscription businesses in general and news organizations in particular, we could be open to it. So one is monetization. The second, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to bring in the power of communities on Facebook and Instagram to really have models where news organizations can engage with their most interested viewers or readers, where you leverage the mechanisms that allow them access to reporters and anchors. We already know multiple experiments that have been done around the world. Washington Post has done that with Instagram, if I remember, in terms of engaging with the different kind of audience that they thought was available on Instagram. Condé Nast, when they kind of brought together a publication on women who travel, they realized that there was so much equity behind that idea, they created a group around women who travel. So I do think that's an area that can be explored a lot more, where news organizations fundamentally leverage the scale of the platforms as well as the fundamental principle of the communities that form organically and with a lot of glue on Facebook or Instagram, and say, how do we engage with that community? I think the third thing, and here I'm kind of going off my brief a bit, but where I think it's just to exhibit openness to the idea of partnering with news organizations, is all of us know that we have all been looking at the space of local news in India. And for many reasons, local news in India hasn't really taken off, and I mean deeply local. Obviously, there's a very healthy, regional language news ecosystem in this country, whether it's in Kerala, Tamil Nadu, across the board in Bengal or UP. So I'm talking about even more going local to, let's say, a college campus, college town. I would be curious to see, are there ways in which we as a company and news organizations like yours can partner to see, can we leverage all of the scale of the platform, the tools that are available, the fact that people are already there, to kind of give a big boost to local news and be an ally for news organizations. So for me, I would look at the partnership as covering all three. It's monetization, it's the ability to leverage communities, and I think it's being an ally for news organizations in India as you explore new models that are both at the frontier and may not have had sustainable equations in the past.
Okay, my next question is a little long, so it has 2 or 3 in it, but I'll just set it up that where I'm coming from. At News Laundry, our slogan is when the public pays, the public is served. Because unless news is primarily funded by the reader, the ad-led news model, in our view, doesn't, it will either not serve the public because it will, just want to get clicks because that's how you can charge, higher advertising rates, or it will, not be sustainable. With ad rates also, falling online. So news is premium content, whoever does it. We believe news is premier content. Now, Netflix, which got a valuation of more than, studios that have been around for decades, is also looking at premium content. You pay for it every month. It's not available for free. Going by that, other studios, HBO, Disney, they've realized that they were late into this game. So rather than give away all their content to a Netflix, they will set up their own system. Some of them are already in place. Amazon has come up with theirs. So premium content is now behind a paywall, which can't be shared, let's say, on a Facebook. So my question is, will this consolidation in the entertainment space, like I can't share one of those on Facebook, will it change the kind of video that is available behind paywalls and the video that can be shared freely? And B, any report you read, the largest chunk of advertising growth is basically Facebook and Google. And I mean, let's face it, a video that makes you feel good or entertains you will get way more traffic than 60 minutes. So in that context, what are the kind of monetizing opportunities that you think exist for entertainment and exist for news? And as is my thesis, that they can't be similar. Would you agree, or you think video is video?
I don't know is the, I guess, the short answer to that long question. And I don't know because there are so many layers to that, and I think you've called out many of those. My sense is there is space for coexistence of multiple models. And I think we are at the stage where we're trying to discover both what is the model that allows a platform or a service to attract a large followership, or if the model fundamentally is reliant on only a very small audience but very engaged. That could be very different. And I think experimenting with both subscription and advertising. And a few principles there, right? And I want to start with, I think, the question that you asked in terms of where Facebook is. I think 2 things to call out there. I think Facebook has chosen to be free because we have the belief and conviction that free allows us to be accessible for everyone. That the minute you start charging for something, there will be some people who are left out. So Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp remaining free comes from a fundamental belief that we want our services to be used by everyone in the world, independent of their income, their ability to pay. So I think that conviction runs deep. And I think I do even personally believe that that has resulted in a lot of people being able to use our services. And that's powerful, and I think it's the right thing to do. Now, what that means is to build a sustainable business where you've made the choice that you're free for consumers, you will need at least advertising as the model that is fueling revenue for us today. So those two go together. But equally, there are others who can make different choices. I think you called out a few where they charge some money or they charge a lot of money, and therefore fundamentally it will be accessible to a lot fewer people than if it were available for free. But it also allows them to run a very different business model. So I do think the one thing would be to really look for any company, including news organizations, to kind of fundamentally look at that and say, where do I want to be on the spectrum, right? I think, do I want to be accessible for everyone, which allows me to create big scale, and therefore I will have to find a monetization model that leverages scale? Or do I believe that with the kind of, whether it's news or entertainment or sports, with the kind of content that I'm creating, there are enough people who will have followership of that, who will also pay a certain amount, and that model is more attractive for me. I'm not sure whether there is one answer for every company. I think it probably does start with what's your philosophy and what's the kind of followership model that you want, and therefore the monetization model. I think the one interesting thing to call out is even some streaming platforms that started at a certain kind of a price point in another market. If you've followed their trajectory, you would see that they have price points in India that are much lower than what it may have been in their core market like the US. I think it does give you a sense of the inherent tension even for established business models, where it's fairly hard to kind of build a global price point and kind of say, here's my price point, and I'll charge people the same in the US as in India. I think you can do that, but if you do that, it may be a bit more difficult for you to get very large numbers in India. So I think it's a choice that you have to make, I think. And again, there are companies that are doing somewhere in between, where they keep the funnel open and free for a large number of people, and then say, there are some things for which I will charge the consumer. I honestly think the good part about what's happening is there are a lot of people on the internet. There are all kinds of people. Payment mechanisms have evolved in ways that were not true even 3 years ago. So I do think all creators, including news organizations, do now have the luxury of choosing for themselves the kind of followership model that they want. And I think the revenue model follows from that rather than the other way around.
Right. I still have actually 3 or 4 questions that I wanted to ask, but we also have to open this out to the audience. But before that, I just have one quick question. You were talking about the price points of large companies who operate in various markets and how they have to kind of be very sensible and wise about how they price it. But other than pricing, a problem that comes with organizations as big as Facebook is that you're available in so many different countries around the world. Every country has had different laws on freedom of speech. I mean, I was on a program to Germany, and being a political satirist, I made a joke with my hosts, and they said, you can't make that joke here because it referred to World War II and Hitler. I said, but I'm here talking about, about liberal values and freedom of speech, because that was the program. They said, yeah, we believe in all that, but just this is out of bounds because it's too soon. Maybe in 100 years we will be able to. Now, that's the law there. There's a law in the US that's different. In India, I'm not sure anyone really knows what the law is. Depends, aaj mood kya hai. But when you're working in so many different countries, you have one interface, one design. You have one brain, so to speak, the tech or the algorithm that is pulling stuff down, putting it up. Does compliance, regulatory frameworks around the world and one product become a big problem? And this is the first time that humanity is facing this problem with the internet being everywhere from one kind of pipeline. And how do you negotiate that? And in that context, fines came up in Europe, 5 billion, I think it was. How is Facebook going to manage this size and so many rules and laws around the country?
No, I think it's a great question, and I do appreciate, Abhinandan, that you haven't mocked me so far. I think exactly right. I think we are a global platform. I think there's power in that because you're able to connect with communities around the world, including your friends and family. The standard that we set for ourselves are the community guidelines. And I think with the articulation of the community guidelines that are global in nature, that's our attempt to frame what you're calling out as this competing sort of balance between freedom of expression and say other concerns linked to, for example, safety, right? And we recognize that. We do want people to have the ability to freely express their point of view. That's the power of a platform like Facebook. And at the same time, we're also, we deeply recognize that at times these platforms can be used for online harm and abuse. And therefore, there's always, we're always trying to balance those competing values or competing interests. And our expression of that is the community guidelines. So, and we look at those guidelines and we evolve it as we see different kinds of behaviors on the platform.
Those are consistent with so many laws from different parts of the country.
So that's the second part of it. And I think the part, for example, let's take a specific example linked to law enforcement and concerns from law enforcement, for example. The reality is we do recognize that there are times when law enforcement needs access to people's data, for example, right? And we at least see ourselves as an ally for where we see that there could be harm or there could be our platforms are used in a harmful manner. What can we do being respectful of the local laws that allow us to do what is right? So I do think those balancing interests are part of what we have to do because we both want to make sure that we remain a platform for free expression as well as we are exhibiting responsibility by making sure that our platform is not leveraged for harmful activities or for abuse. I think the point that you raised about the consent decree with the FTC in the US that involved a $5 billion fine, it's a bit different. And I think for me, it's worth calling out that I think in the last 2 years, the company has changed dramatically. I think one of the things that I observed coming in early January into Facebook was the degree of sincerity and purposefulness there is about acknowledging and fixing the mistakes that may have been made in the past. And for me, there is no confusion at all in the company that privacy is a very, very important mission for us. And I think that Facebook as a company is not the same today as we were 2 years ago. And what fundamentally has changed is the emphasis on privacy. And in many ways, through the FTC agreement, I think where we have committed to doing things that have gone even beyond what is there in the US law, I think it's just a signal of the deep commitment that we are going to take this seriously, fundamentally change it, and really set the standards for the internet in terms of what can be done to protect people's privacy.
Okay, we'll take a few questions, and I hope I can sneak my audio question in because it's left behind. Sorry. Okay, let's start with the young lady here, and then we'll move back after that. We have any on that side? Yeah. Go. And I have a request. Just keep your questions a question and keep it brief so that we can get as many in. Thank you.
Yeah. My question is to you, Abhinandan. Ajit promptly said that, it's on you. So he promptly said
I think older people should get the first question.
The transition from, say, an advertising video on demand to a subscription video on demand lies with the publisher. And so how do you balance it all? You have an organization, you have journalists who you need to pay, but then there are also a lot of people who want to consume your content. Okay. So how do you make that decision?
I'll tell you more about this later, but often I don't pay them at all. So, but it's a longer answer. But like I said, I believe that unless people pay for news will not serve the people. So that's my point. So there was one there. Yeah, sorry. I'll just come to you, young man. Sorry. Yeah, go. And just keep it brief, please. Was there one here?
Yeah, thanks. My question was to Ajit. Ajit, I've been kind of following Facebook for the last few months now. I kind of work with a non-profit, a small non-profit. We've been hearing a lot of updates from the US wherein Facebook might transition away from the feed model that it is doing right now, closer towards closed groups, that Facebook would be just for your friends and family and would not be maybe as easily accessible to the larger public. Is that scenario going to play out here in India, and how do you think it would affect small businesses or non-profits like us?
I haven't heard that at all. And let me, I think let me clarify two parts of it. I think I know what you're alluding to. Two parts. I think there's clarity that where WhatsApp, for example, is a space for private communication, Facebook is the equivalent of a public square. I think the role of the Facebook app, as we see it, is for those public conversations to be enabled, for public content to be enabled. So I think, I suspect how you framed it is not true, and it's not how the company has articulated it. I think the particular point that you raised is there more of a gearing towards, on the feed, more of a gearing towards friends and family? And I think over the last couple of years, I think, and again, I think to the point that I mentioned earlier, we are always doing different experiments to understand what could we do better. And really what we are trying to make sure that it's a platform where friends, family, communities can engage, and we find mechanisms to reduce any kind of online harm or abuse as much as possible. And in that context, we do think where on the feed there are greater opportunities to engage with friends and family, it is what our users have been seeking, and therefore it makes sense to do that. But I think, you know, for you, if you're a non-profit or if you're a small business, we do believe you should absolutely leverage the power of our platform to reach audiences that you're interested in. Use groups. I don't think there's a trade-off between one or the other, right? I think groups are available for you to create communities that are closer to people that you may want to engage with. One of the things that amazes me is the number of small businesses around the world for whom business presence means a Facebook page. So none of that changes. So I think we would want you to leverage the full power of the platform to advance your objectives as a nonprofit. And I'm happy to engage offline on that as well.
My question to Ajit is, sorry, it will be a bit long, 30 seconds.
Okay, time starts now.
Yeah. So you just said the Facebook is no more the same agency, same social platform as it used to be 2 years ago, just probably, I think, because of the Cambridge Analytica thing. Now, the point is, even then the Facebook was able to survive, even after such a big incident. But the subscription-based models in India, like since you have been to many countries and the Facebook is operating in many countries, you must be aware. So I want to have a sneak peek into your your ideas, that how far is a subscription-based model regarding news, say for example News Laundry, Quint, Scroll, for anything, is how far is it viable, sustainable, keeping in mind the cultural diversity, the diversity and all those idiosyncrasies of Indian people or the country.
Okay, thank you. So are we going to sink or swim, basically?
Yeah, I just want to clarify. Diversity, I accept. Idiosyncrasy, I don't know what you mean. I don't want to embrace that term. Just to, I think it's the same point that Abhinandan had asked as well. And for me, it's again two things, right? One, I think the model that you choose, and I'm assuming you're part of a news organization. No, I think the model that you choose as a creator is entirely yours. And I think it really, I can't emphasize it enough. I think the starting point has to be, what is the followership model that you want? and then the revenue model follows, right? I don't think the conversation can start with saying, should I follow an advertising model or a subscription model? I think it is what kind of followership and communities you want to build. Is it large or small? And in that context, what is the right revenue model? But second, yes, absolutely. I think where we can be an ally for helping build subscription models for news organizations that have chosen to go down that path, and we have products that we are now testing with News Laundry, that we launched with Business Standard. We're completely happy to be an ally for that. But it's a model those news organizations are choosing, and I think the role that we see as the partners to make sure that we are leveraging the power of our platform to make sure that we can help drive subscriptions for that news company.
Okay, let's get that one, and just keep it brief. I'll try to come to you, but I really want to get my question in.
I have a sort of a political question, and excuse me, Ajit, if I sound a little accusatory.
Sorry, a little what?
Little accusatory. Yeah.
Accusatory, okay.
Yeah.
No, I love that.
Okay. So you are talking about balance and community guidelines. I'm talking in terms of the just recently held elections. So there were instances, and I'm not going to get down to the specifics of those, there were instances when a certain political party had a distinct advantage in terms of the community guidelines. So for example, if I had to post something on my Facebook wall, I was barred from posting for around 30-35 days without specifying any reason, while someone else posting in favor of another party, I'm not naming the party for obvious reasons, posting in favor of another party was not barred. So I want to know, so when you talk about balance, does it tilt towards a political party at times when you see that that political party is in power?
Yeah, no, I think it's I don't think that's accusatory. I think it's a fair question. I just think the premise of that question is inaccurate. And what I saw in the efforts that we were doing as a company to make sure that we were absolutely non-partisan and objective through the Indian elections. I think there were two parts to it, right? There was a lot of effort focused on integrity, just making sure that we were doing right by the principles we had established for reducing misinformation. There was work we were doing with the Election Commission of India. And then I think the third overarching principle for us was that there was absolutely no bias or partisanship at all. So I know from the work that we were doing, from the frameworks that we were creating internally, that I think the question that you're asking, were you sort of bending it for a particular political party? Absolutely not. I'm happy to discuss offline the specific example for you, and we should help understand why you saw the bias and why you were not allowed to post. My sense is we can find a rational explanation for it that is not rooted in political bias, and I think we should engage with you and give you an answer. But I feel comfortable, having seen the work, seeing the work, that there was never a lens of do we do something to kind of aid a political party at all? Not at all.
Okay, I'm sorry, I had this one question that I may be out of town. Oh, time out. Dear God. Okay, fine. No chance of one. I'm so sorry. It was about audio and podcast, but I'll probably catch you later because I was very keen that, I saw this report of the next 500 million where they'll come from online in India. And India will be the world's first audio-first internet, that more people will discover the internet through audio because of bandwidth and literacy issues. And we are betting heavily on podcasts, and I was wondering, will podcasts be such an important part of your scheme as video is? But thank you, Ajit, a pleasure.
Thank you, Abhinandan.
Let's give Ajit a big hand. And thank you.